up with this idea quite early on. We got excited by the idea of could we make a Tomb Raider board game, and but obviously it's not a license you can just. It takes a little bit of work to acquire a license like that. So we put together this idea, and the idea was that what if Lara had always been a board game character? So what if she's going on an adventure, but this time it just happens to be on your tabletop? And we've seen Lara before in movies, we've seen her in comic books, in obviously there's the animated series now, and they always tailor her to the medium, and that's what we wanted to do with this. So we put this idea together of, this isn't just Tomb Raider the board game, because Lara's on a brand new adventure. And pitched it as a solo game, and obviously they hadn't really seen solo games before, so this was quite a new idea for them. And we haven't really seen solo games with a big IP. We've seen big IPs do solo modes, but not a dedicated built from the ground up solo game. So somehow everybody went for it and let me do it. I was sure at some point someone was going to get cold feet and say, no, we can't do this, but here we are. We're here now. It's on Kickstarter. Yeah, so there's two different ways to play. There is something called the Adventure Book, which are a structured narrative adventure that takes place over 15 chapters. Yeah. Each chapter takes 15 to 30 minutes. No, sorry, a bit longer than that. 15 to 60 minutes. And then there is the Island Campaign mode, which is what you've seen set up here. So this is it uses more components. It's a much more randomized, expansive adventure. So in the Island Campaign mode, you have this island board here. This is the island of Chronos, and you are looking for the Crypt of Chronos. So you are searching the tombs, which are these areas here, to try and find a map to the crypt and the key to open it. So on this board, we've got island locations, deserts, mountains, and tombs. Each location you get to, this is Lara, this is Lara's pin. Each location has, you draw a randomized card that matches. So at the moment, Lara's in a tomb. So you would draw a tomb location, which we've got over here. And that tells you how to lay out the tiles, how to lay out doors, switches, that kind of thing. Yeah, there's Lara on the board. These are 3D printed miniatures that we've just sorted out for the show. So they're not obviously the final quality yet. You will then use your actions, which are on the Lara board. So you have these Lara dice. You have 6. You can use as many as you want for an individual action, but you can only use each dice once per turn. So after you've used all 6, Lara's turn is over, and then enemies are going to move around the board. They're going to try and attack you if they can see you. And then after that, an event happens, which could be that you've triggered a trap, it could be new enemies spawning, or it could be something that helps you. So the idea is you're going to go around, complete a series of objectives on that card, and you are complete the location, and then you find out what was hidden in that tomb. And you're trying to go around and find the key in the map. So that's sort of a very quick overview. There's a lot more to it than that. There is, you can research to find scrolls that will help you to find the what you're looking for. You can search, you can find scrap and oil and cloth, and you can use those to craft new outfits, new weapons, special abilities, and all kinds of things. That's a very quick overview. I've been working on this for probably 18 months or so. I had quite a good idea of what I wanted it to be before we pitched it, so perhaps a little bit longer than that. But yeah, since we got the license, I think it was about 18 months we've been plugging away and making this what it is now. Iconic Studios, we've made things like we made the Saw board game. We've got a party game called 1%. We've got a whole bunch of stuff ranging from small family party games to obviously bigger ones like this.
And we're we're looking at UK Games Expo here. This is my first interview of the show, so it might be a bit rusty. Right in front of us on the table, we have Sniper Elite Operation Kraken, the brand new expansion for Sniper Elite, the board game that released way back in Kickstarter in 2020. This is based on the iconic video game series Sniper Elite, and for tabletop players, it is a tense, hidden movement game where one player, playing as Carl Fairbairn, is a sniper trying to infiltrate various different maps and play against up to 1, 2, or 3 defenders who are trying to thwart them. The sniper will be using all sorts of bolt cutters, TNT explosives. The defenders will be using vehicles, sniffer dogs, and their own snipers and scouts to try and basically stop the sniper getting to where he wants to go. So this is actually Sniper Elite Operation Kraken is on GameFound right now, depending when you're watching this. It's running until June 19th, and we're going to be delivering really quickly in January next year. So hopefully you can check it out and have a great time watching UK Games Expo content.
So my name's Phil from Rebellion Plugged. I'll say a little bit about Tunnels and Trolls and New Age. So Tunnels and Trolls is the second ever RPG, after you can guess which one. And it's hitting its 50th anniversary this year. And what we're doing is we're doing a reimagining of TNT for the modern era. This is a game that at its roots is all about being immediate and accessible. It's a game where you roll up your character in a minute and you're immediately in the action. It's as simple as you could possibly want it to play it. You can jump straight in, you can get right in the action. It's grounded, and it's a world where full of trolls, as the name might expect. The idea being that trolls are these ancient beings, and in the dark they thrive, but as soon as they're hit by sunlight they immediately petrify. So they mostly live underground. But hundreds of years ago, the sun disappeared for a long time and the trolls reigned. The world was completely torn apart. Now that's ancient history. What exactly happened, we don't know. But what we do know is that it's a world full of riches buried underground that are just begging for adventurers to go explore, find out what really happened, find the treasures and the ancient magics and the technology that's buried beneath. Where the maps are unclear, where the world needs rebuilding, and you, ordinary person, can make your mark on history by taking up your sword or your pitchfork or whatever you have to hand, setting out. Maybe you don't save the world, but maybe make it a little bit better.
Games of Loot Studios, a 3D SCL subscription company where we've just launched our first game called Malediction. It's a miniatures card game, meaning that you're going to play building a deck of cards, and as you play the cards, the miniatures will show up on the battlefield. So quickly, I'll just run everyone through it. When you choose a seeker for your warband, which would be the leader of your warband, so here, for example, we have Sigrid. This is represented by her card and her model. Maybe this will help you focus. And then you build your deck around that. So Sigrid is from the Order of the Shattered Throne, and so all the cards that you add there will be from the Order of the Shattered Throne as well, such as the Valkyrie's Priest, for example, and many other models. And when we play, everyone starts with Echo, which is a resource that you can spend to play your units, and you can also play spell cards, so your deck will consist of both. What makes this different from other miniature war games is that usually you would bring your whole army up front, and both armies would be fully deployed, and then we would start playing, whereas here deployment is part of the game, and you deploy every round. Also, something that I find very interesting is that starting on the second round, You can deploy not only on your deployment zone, which would be in the corners, but you could deploy in 1 inch from any model you have on the battlefield that is not engaged. So this actually speeds up the game, making your models enter the fray of battle in the round that they have been deployed. Another interesting thing is when you select your warband and your deck, you're also choosing what terrains you're bringing into the game. So, for example, in this terrain, the Primal Blood player chose to bring the Noxious Flesh Gardens, while the Order of the Shattered Throne player brought the Astarian Pathways. And these have in-game effects that affect all units on the battlefield, regardless of what faction they are, if they're friend or foe. So whoever steps on the Noxious Flesh Garden always suffers damage, and unless they can fly. And whoever steps on the Astarian Pathway will get a movement benefit, for example. I'll also quickly run down through the factions. I think that's something very interesting that has a lot of identity. So one of our factions is Primal Blood. They were these wild creatures that eventually started drinking the blood of giants, and they gained sentience, they gained powers, and they also started shape-shifting and becoming wildly different. And so they believe that only the strong can lead. And so Thundersteps, I'll pick him up for you, our poster boy. He's the leader of the Primal Blood because one day he came from the mists of Malediction, and no one knows where he came from, and he doesn't even speak any of the languages known in the continent, but everyone just looked at him and said, oh, he's so powerful, let's just follow him. So now the Primal Blood is just wandering after Thundersteps, looking for answers. Here on the demo table, we also have the Order of the Shattered Throne, and they're trying to bring back order into the world and restore the throne of their fallen gods. Basically, I'll let you guys read the lore more into that if you want in malediction.gg. But what I find interesting about them is, since they don't want chaos in the world, for example, they have Griffin Riders, but they believe that Griffin Riders are these abhorrent creatures, Griffins I mean, are abhorrent creatures, so the riders clip the wings off the Griffins, and there's these glorified cavalry basically. And then we have two other factions, which are the Conclave of the Spheres, which are schools of magicians. And so in a nutshell, I would say that they are counterspell. So basically when your opponent uses spell cards, they have a lot of ways to mitigate that. Also, they kind of, through the study of magic, they can play multiple spells per activation. They can do more tricks with their spells than other factions would in a normal situation. And lastly, we have the Legion of the Fallen, which are these guys right over here. They believe that life comes after death, so they can actually bring back fallen units. Not only do they have this undead theme, but the mechanics in the game also represent that. Finally, another thing that's important to say is, how do you win Malediction, right? I think that's something that every game should be very clear. And in this game, you win by reaching a mastery threshold, mastery being victory points. And basically, you gain mastery by destroying enemy units, and the stronger the enemy unit, the more mastery you would gain. And by claiming these husks on the battlefield, which are basically the husks of fallen warriors who used to hold powerful magical relics. So when a unit claims one, the husk disappears from the battlefield, and they can pick a relic card right over here, which are super powerful game-changing effects. And what's really interesting is whenever a guy who has a relic dies, since like I said, husks are former relic wielders, the guy who used to control the relic, your unit, if he is ever defeated, he becomes a husk. So a new husk appears on the battlefield, and that husk can be remanifested into a new, different relic every time. And that's Malediction in a nutshell.
So, this is the War of the Worlds One More Day. This is a game that I'm going to be bringing to Kickstarter in September. You heard it here first. I'm announcing the date tomorrow, the 23rd of September. So, come to Kickstarter. It's a solo game, designed as a solo game. Plays really nicely with 2 to 3 people together, cooperatively. And it's a story-driven survival game based on the novel by H.G. Wells, The War of the Worlds. So, in the core game, you'll get 2 survivors. You'll get the journalist and a deck of 10 cards unique to that character. And you'll get the infantry soldier, and they come with a deck of 10 cards unique to them, and then you'll choose one of 6 stories. So there's this very narrative driven, there's 21,000 words of narrative in the whole game, and you've got 6 stories to choose from. So you've got your character, pick your story, the story will then take you on an adventure through Victorian England, trying to survive through the Martian threat. So you'll be encountering all the things from the book, like the red weed and the black smoke, the Martian fighting machines, and there'll be cylinders crashing to Earth, ruffians and gangs of looters that you got to survive through, and every day will just be a struggle to try and survive just one more day. You have your main story that you're playing through. There'll be chapters in the story, and each chapter will give you an objective. So it might say, get to the coast and find the military supply ship and get the blasting charges, and then get them back to Horsell Common and destroy one of the cylinders that's just come from Mars. So in order to do that, you'll have to generate, use these tokens here. So you're going to generate intuition to travel, and so once you generate enough intuition using your cards, so you'll draw 5 cards into your hand at the start of the turn, and they'll allow you to do all the different actions. So generating intuition, healing yourself, gaining hope, gaining health, dodging enemies that you're engaged with, running away from enemies. But anyway, so let's say we generate enough intuition, we get to the coast, and then we'll open the next chapter of the story. And the next chapter is there's a crowd of people that you got to fight through, or whatever it might be. So the story really drives your objectives. So each chapter has a set of objectives you have to get through to get to the next part of the story. And hopefully you'll survive. And every turn, as you advance the story, you'll be gaining shillings with some of your cards, and they allow you to access the marketplace here. And the marketplace allows you to buy new cards. So these cards aren't available to you at the very start of the game, but you'll be able to buy new cards every turn and build your deck, make your deck better to enable you to have a better chance of surviving. So there's roughly 21,000 words of narrative in the game, not all in so there's split into 6 main stories. But yeah, it's quite a lot of narrative. You get every chapter, which is every 3 or 4 turns, you get to read, I don't know, a minute's worth of narrative that takes you on to the next stage.
So this is Beyond the Veil. So it's a tabletop role-playing game which is set in the sort of the modern real world, you might say, but where paranormal things are actually happening. And so you start off the game as kind of an average Joe, average Jane, and then something happens which gives you an awakening that there are broader things going on in the world. But that takes a while to unfold. The play experience is really sort of driven by the narrative, and so the rules are there to support the narrative, not the other way around. So let's say I play I play as my grandma, for instance, and I want to do something heroic with a walking stick. Let's say I need to jump off a balcony and swing or something. Now I can actually try that, but it's unlikely to work. But the point of the matter is, you can always try something, and the rules will support you in giving it a go, so long as it is it fits that character. It feels like it has fidelity. As a multi-year DM, the advice I always give to anyone, which is true of this game as in any other TTRPG, as long as you know where have your characters come from, what do they need to do in the next place they're going, and where are they gonna, or where could they end up afterwards. As long as you know like one sentence about each of those, you can handle any situation, and you just need to riff on what the heck it is they're doing. And that's kind of what this game is doing as well. So we try and not have any railroad there. There's quite a sense of it being in an open world to a greater or lesser extent. And yeah, that's the vibes. So like I mentioned, so the narrative comes first, so rather than the rules. That's one thing. And leaning into that, well, in terms of character creation, there are no classes and there are no levels, and so it's entirely fluid. So what that means is, if you wanted to, you could build yourself as a character. You could work out, okay, how strong am I? How intelligent am I? How funny am I? And you can bake that in really really quite bespoke ways. Or you can make Vin Diesel if you wanted to be someone that was like more of a superhero. Or you could make Fox Mulder, from the X-Files. You could do any of that. And so that's something that we think is kind of by no means unique, but it is sort of special about the game. And then also the way we use the dice. So it's not a D20 system. So we use all of the polyhedral dice. And so there are 6 dice and there are 6 attributes, and you assign one of those dice to each of the attributes. And so that means that each character is therefore inherently balanced, because everyone has one stat that has their D4, one stat that has their D20. So you have things that you're good at, things that you're bad at. And the way that the dice work then is, let's say I'm trying something with my D4 stat, and so it's unlikely that I'm going to succeed with that, so the maximum I get is a 4, right? But the idea is that every dice can explode upwards. I mean, if I roll a 4 on the D4, I get to roll a D6, and if I roll a D6 on that, I can roll a D8, and now the math is against you. You're going all the way up to a D20, right? But what it means is you always have a chance of succeeding on anything. But the kicker is, if I roll my D4, I roll any dice, and I roll a 1, not only have I failed, but I've got to roll that same dice again. If I roll another 1, then something mechanically challenging has happened. And the overseer, which is what we call the games master, will make some condition up here which kind of complicates the life, but hopefully also pushes the narrative forward in a way which kind of increases the enjoyment. What we enjoy as players, so we've been playing Dungeons & Dragons since we were 10, and we're now like 40 odd, and so we go way back. And the most fun that we have, it tends to be when you're working out, hey, how do we complete this challenge together by covering for one another's strengths and weaknesses, like as a group, rather than approaching it as a bunch of superheroes that can all kind of like solve each situation kind of like solo by themselves. So the game is very much trying to foster that sense of collaboration, because it's in the collaboration that the silly stuff happens, and then the fun happens, and the tragedy happens as well. And so when you're doing it that way, when you're collaborating, we find that everyone's so much more like alert to the game, rather than just waiting for my turn to cast another cantrip or whatever it happens to be. I'm always doing the same thing each turn. This is trying to have a play experience where your choices are really varied, and actually you need to constantly be aware of what someone else is doing, because you might need to support them in order to make their next turns successful, and vice versa. So if you're not in the action, you're not paying attention, then you actually can't quite play the game properly, because the collaboration is kind of where the magic happens.